The Hunt of the God Hunter, a long-form sci-fi horror story for narration. Recording begins, low hum, distant thunder. If you're hearing this, then the uplink found a path through the ion storm, or you're listening to a stolen file that was never meant to leave the black vaults of Terra Gov. Either way, listen carefully. Because the thing we came to kill is still out there. And it learns. Static, a breath shakes the mic. My name is Lieutenant Mara Vale. Call sign, Vesper. I was the infiltration lead of Orion Spear, a Tier 1 extraction and erasure unit. There were 7 of us when we crossed the Vale route and dropped into the Sable Expanse. There's one of us now. And I'm not certain the one who's speaking is still me. So I'm going to tell you the whole story from the first lie to the last scream. Not for sympathy, not for absolution, but because somewhere in the galaxy, another squad is going to read the same briefing we did and think they're the hunters. If this reaches you before you launch, turn back. If it reaches you after you land, don't take your helmet off. And if it reaches you when you see the god, pray it hasn't already smelled you. Chapter 1. The Order That Didn't Make Sense. We were called in on a Tuesday, which is how I knew it wasn't routine. Routine contracts came on Fridays, so Command could pretend they were sending us home for the weekend. But Tuesday meant an emergency. Tuesday meant someone important wanted something scrubbed clean before the next news cycle. The briefing room on the Corvette Acheron was windowless. It always was. They didn't want you looking at the stars while they lied to your face. They wanted your world to be a screen. Captain Rourke sat at the head of the table, broad shoulders, calm hands. He wasn't a talker. He was a man who believed in clean edges, clear targets, clear exits, clear ghosts. To his right was Sato, our sniper, skinny as a wire and twice as tense. Across from him, Brant, heavy weapons built like a cargo loader. Next to Brant, Dr. Amani Klein, combat medic, eyes too kind for the things she had seen. Then Gray, signals and drones, always chewing on the inside of his lip like he was trying to swallow a secret. And Havel, demolition, quiet with that particular kind of patience you only find in people who have made peace with fire. 7 bodies, 7 lives, 1 mission. The hollow lit up with a planet, pale and bruised like old fruit. Designation, Karin 3, the handler said. No face, just a voice, filtered, genderless, safe. Unlicensed biosignature cluster, no registered settlements, no recognized culture, unknown technological level. Rourke's eyes didn't leave the projection. So why us? A pause. The handler's voice softened like silk over a blade. Because there is a local anomaly, a worship object, a god. The indigenous population has unified around it. It has exhibited lethal capability against prior reconnaissance. Sato let out a small laugh. A god killed recon. What is this mythology week? The handler ignored him. A new image flashed, a smear of night vision footage, a forest dense, a team moving through it. Then something tall, too fast, and the feed drowned in static. The last frame burned into my eyes. A silhouette, angular and wrong, standing over a human body like a question mark. Prior team was lost, the handler said. Your objectives: locate the anomaly, confirm threat class, eliminate. Secondary objective: recover any artifacts associated with the anomaly. Tertiary: sanitize, no witnesses, no transmissions. Brant cracked his knuckles. So we're shooting a statue. Not a statue, Gray muttered. That thing moved. The handler's voice tightened. This is a high-value contract, corporate interest. Non-disclosure is absolute. You will receive coordinates for orbital insertion. You will leave no trace. Rourke leaned back. Indigenous population, how many? Estimated 3,000 to 5,000, the handler replied. Primitive, pre-industrial. If resistance is encountered, neutralize. Amani's jaw clenched. Neutralize means kill. It means ensure mission success, the handler said. Rourke's gaze flicked to each of us. The unspoken question, are we doing this? We were soldiers, but we weren't fools. We all knew primitive was the word people used when they wanted you to stop seeing faces. We'd been used to bulldoze inconvenient truths before, but the contract was stamped with executive clearance, black ink that ate the light. That meant refusal wasn't an option. And then the handler showed us the last slide. A symbol etched into stone appeared on the hollow, a circle split by a vertical line surrounded by smaller marks like teeth. My throat went dry. I'd seen that symbol once before, in a file that didn't exist, a file that made men disappear if they asked questions. "Where did you get that?" I whispered. The handler hesitated. "Recovered from Karan 3 surface. The anomaly is associated with an extinct precursor culture. Your squad is authorized to engage at maximum force." Precursors. That one word turned a simple kill mission into a nightmare. Precursors meant technology older than human history. Precursors meant machines that didn't run on physics we understood. Precursors meant stories, whispered in barracks, traded like contraband, about ships found drifting with crews carved open from the inside. Rourke stood, "Gear up, drop in 1 hour." The screen went dark, and in the black reflection I saw my own face, pale, tight, already haunted. Chapter 2, Descent Through a Dead Sky. Karan 3 didn't show on public star charts. It wasn't even in the shipping lanes. The Acheron approached on silent drive, hugging cold shadows, avoiding beacons. No ping, no signature, a ghost ship carrying ghosts. The planet below was wrapped in a storm band that looked like a bruise around its equator. Lightning crawled through it in slow motion. Gray ran a last sweep. Atmospheric interference is off the charts. If we lose comms, we're on line of sight only. "Great," Sato said. "A haunted planet with no phone service." Havel checked his charges. "No comms means no backup. Try not to bleed out." Brant strapped his cannon to his spine. "If something wants to play, I'll give it noise." Amani adjusted her medpack. Her hands shook just a little. She hid it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rourke stepped into the drop pod and looked at me. "Vesper, your point, don't get creative." I nodded, "Yes, sir." The pod sealed. The world became metal and breathing. Drop thrusters ignite, a rumble. We slammed into atmosphere like a bullet. Heat screamed across the hull. My teeth rattled. Through the small porthole, I saw the storm swallow us. Lightning flashed close enough to turn bone to glass. Gray's voice crackled in my ear. "Telemetry is unstable. If the pod scatters, rendezvous at the river marker." Rourke's reply was flat, "Copy." I held my rifle tighter, like pressure could keep the universe from tearing. Then the drop pod shuddered, the lights flickered. For 1 second I smelled something impossible, like wet soil after rain and burnt copper and flowers. Sweet, rotten flowers. Sato's voice sharp, "Do you smell that?" "Atmospheric contaminants," Gray said, but his tone wasn't sure. Amani whispered, "It smells like a hospital." The pod hit the ground hard enough to bruise organs. The hatch blew. Humid air rushed in, thick and alive. We stepped into a jungle that shouldn't have existed. Trees rose like cathedral pillars, trunks braided with vines. The canopy was so dense it turned day into green dusk. The air vibrated with insect noise and distant animal calls, too many, layered like a chorus hiding a knife. And under it all, that sweet rot smell. Rourke raised a hand. We went still. Gray's drone buzzed up, a metallic beetle, and vanished into the canopy. Its feed painted our visors with thermal outlines and terrain maps. "River is east," Gray said. "We're 3 clicks from the primary coordinate, moving." We moved. Boots sank into spongy ground. Leaves slapped our armor. I scanned for movement, for shape, for anything that looked like a trap. It was too quiet for a planet with life. Not silent, not calm. quiet like a room where someone has just stopped screaming. Chapter 3. The People Who Prayed in Whispers. We found the first sign of the locals 2 hours in. A line of carved stakes marking a trail, each stake wrapped in woven fiber and hung with little bone charms. Amani crouched, touched one with a gloved finger. Human bones. No, Gray said. Small, probably local fauna. Sato aimed down the trail. They're watching. He was right. I felt it, eyes on us from the undergrowth, just out of the drone's view. The jungle seemed to lean closer, listening. Rourke gave a signal, non-lethal posture, masks on, weapons down but ready. We followed the trail. The village came into view like a dream. Circular huts made of bark and mud, smoke curling from central fires. People moved between them, thin, dark-skinned faces painted with ash and clay. They froze when they saw us. No screams, no panicked rush. They just stared, wide-eyed, as if a prophecy had walked out of the trees. A child stepped forward. He couldn't have been more than 8. He held a stick with feathers tied to it. His hands trembled. He spoke in a language that wasn't in Gray's database. Clicks and soft vowels, a pleading rhythm. Amani lifted her hands slowly, palms out. We're not here to hurt you. The child looked past her, past all of us, and stared at something behind us. His face crumpled in terror. Then every person in the village dropped to their knees at once, foreheads to the dirt. Not for us. For whatever was in the trees. A chill crawled up my spine. I turned slow. The jungle moved. Not with wind, not with animals. With purpose. Leaves parted, and something tall stepped into the edge of the clearing. It wasn't a man. It was shaped like one, in the way a statue is shaped like one. But it was too symmetrical, too precise, like a predator designed by mathematics. Its skin, or outer layer, was pale, almost bone-white, streaked with dark lines that looked like veins until they shifted, and you realized they were moving beneath the surface. Its head was smooth, no hair, no visible mouth. Where eyes should have been were 2 recess pits filled with faint blue light, like distant stars. It stood still, watching. The villagers didn't look up. They shook. They whispered a single word again and again like a prayer. Saithra, Saithra. Sato's rifle lifted an inch. Rourke shoved it down. We were soldiers. We had fought rebels, pirates, synthetic insurgents. We had killed things that looked human and things that didn't. But nothing in my training prepared me for the weight of that gaze, cold, ancient, and somehow curious. Gray's voice trembled in my ear. That's the anomaly, that's the god. Brant breathed, we can take it. The thing took 1 step closer. And every leaf on the ground around it browned, curling as if scorched from the inside. Amani whispered, it's killing the plants just by standing there. Rourke's voice was low. We're not firing, not here, not with civilians. The god tilted its head, an almost human gesture. The blue lights in its eye pits brightened. Then in my visor my calm line hissed. Not static. A voice. My voice. Vesper, it said in perfect mimicry, don't get creative. My blood ran cold. Rourke snapped, who transmitted that? Gray stammered, no one, our channel is encrypted. The god stepped back into the trees. It didn't run. It didn't hide. It just withdrew, like a predator deciding the hunt could wait. The villagers stayed bowed until it was gone. Then they looked up at us with horror, not because we were dangerous, but because we had drawn its attention. A man older with scars like claw marks across his chest spoke in broken trade tongue. Each word was forced, as if his mouth hated the language. You Skymen, he rasped, you bring eyes. Rourke took his helmet off. He always did that, a show of trust, a calculated risk. We are not here for you, he said. We want the thing you call Saithra. The old man's eyes widened. He shook his head violently. No, no, Sathra keep. He pointed at the jungle, then he pointed up at the sky. Skymen take, Sathra kill. Amani stepped closer, soft. What is it? The old man swallowed. Old war, old blood, it's sleep, then wake. Sato scoffed, but there was no humor. It's a machine. The old man looked at him with pity. Not machine, not animal. He tapped his own chest. Not man. He leaned in, and his breath smelled like smoke and fear. It hunts when moon is dead. Above us, the storm dimmed the sun. The light shifted, and for a moment it really did feel like a dead moon had passed over the world. Rourke put his helmet back on. His gaze was hard now. Move, he ordered. We're not staying. We left the village behind, with their prayers following us like hands trying to pull us back. And in the jungle, somewhere ahead, something listened. Chapter 4, Tracks That Shouldn't Exist. We moved toward the coordinates, an ancient crater according to satellite scans. The handler had described it like a target marker, a clean dot on a map. But the jungle didn't do clean. Every step felt like we were trespassing into someone else's dream. Gray's drone returned and landed on his forearm. I'm picking up metallic echoes deeper in, not like ore, like structures, buried. Precursor ruins, Havel said, almost reverent. Amani looked sick. Why would a primitive village be sitting next to precursor ruins? Because it keeps them alive, I said before I could stop myself. Everyone looked at me. I swallowed. The way they bowed, they weren't worshipping a god, they were appeasing a guard dog. Brant snorted. Guard dogs don't copy your voice. Sato muttered, predators do. The jungle grew darker as we approached the crater. The air thickened. That sweet rot smell became stronger, coating the inside of my helmet like a memory. Then we found the first body. It was a recon trooper, Taragov issue armor cracked open like an egg. He lay face down in mud, arms splayed. No blood. Just emptiness. Amani knelt beside him and touched his neck seal. His suit is intact, no breach. So how did he die? Gray asked. Amani's voice was thin. Something drained him, like the inside was hollowed. Havel turned the body over. The visor was fogged from the inside, but we could still see the face. The trooper's eyes were open. And something had carved symbols into his forehead. Small, precise lines that matched the symbol from the briefing. Sato stepped back. Ritual. No, I whispered. Signature. Rourke's voice hardened. We're on high alert, sweep for traps. Gray's drone buzzed outward again, scanning. No tripwires, no mines. Brant chuckled. Because the god doesn't need them. We moved on. The crater revealed itself through the trees like a wound in the earth. A perfect circle, edges too smooth to be natural. The ground sloped down into it, and at the center, half buried in soil and vine, was a structure. Not stone. Not metal exactly. It looked like bone, pale, curved, ribbed. Like the shell of something massive that had died and been hollowed into a temple. And at the entrance stood pillars carved with the same symbols, repeating like teeth. Gray's voice dropped to a whisper. That's not architecture, that's grown. Amani's breathing quickened. Bioconstructed. Havel's eyes gleamed. Precursor biotech, the stuff they told us was myth. Rourke raised his rifle. This is the nest. Sato climbed a fallen tree for elevation. His scope tracked across the crater floor. No movement. Brant cracked his neck. Then we go in, plant charges, and burn the damn thing. We descended. Halfway down, my visor flashed. A warning, microbial spore density high. Then another, neural interference detected. Gray, I said, are you seeing? I'm seeing it, he replied. His voice shook. Something is messing with our implants. Rourke's hand went to his temple, the comms node. Can you block it? Trying, but it's not a signal, it's biological. Amani looked around, alarm rising. The smell its spores. The crater air was heavy with it. You could almost taste it through the filters. Sato's voice snapped. Movement 9 o'clock. We spun. Nothing. Just vines. Then a sound behind us, like metal scraping stone. Havel turned first, his eyes widened. The god stood at the top rim of the crater, silhouetted against stormlight. It had been behind us the whole time, moving silently through the trees, letting us walk into its bowl. It tilted its head again. Then in my ear, a new voice hissed, Captain Rourke's voice, but wrong, stretched like a recording played too slow. Welcome home. And the god stepped forward. Not down the slope. Straight down, falling like a dropped knife, landing in the crater with no sound at all. The ground did not shake, but every leaf in the crater died at once. Chapter 5. The first kill, and the moment we realized we were prey. Rourke shouted fire. We opened up, 7 rifles, a cannon, a sniper round that hit dead center. The god didn't flinch. Bullets struck its pale surface and vanished, like they were being swallowed. Brandt's cannon roared, and the impact threw up mud and shattered vines. When the smoke cleared, the god was still standing. Not damaged. Not even marked. It raised one hand. Something in the air shimmered, and every HUD in our visors went dark. For half a heartbeat, I was blind inside my helmet. Panic rose like bile. Then emergency optics kicked in, low-res, grainy like old cameras. And in that ugly monochrome, I saw the god move. It didn't run. It flowed. It crossed 10 meters in the time it took me to inhale. It was suddenly in front of Havel. Havel raised his detonator. The god touched his chest plate with 2 fingers. Havel froze. His eyes widened behind his visor. Amani screamed, Havel. Havel looked down at his own armor. It was inflating. Not from pressure. From inside. His body swelled against the suit, as if something inside him was expanding, liquid turning to gas, organs filling like balloons. He tried to scream, but the sound turned into a wet gargle. Then his suit cracked at the seams, and a mist, thin, pale, glittering, poured out. Havel collapsed into the mud like a sack of sand. His armor clanged empty. There was nothing left inside it but a smear of gray residue, like ash mixed with mucus. Amani stumbled forward, hands out, but Rourke grabbed her. No, don't touch it. The god looked at us, and for the first time it made a sound. Not a roar. Not a voice. A low pulse, like a heartbeat amplified through a cathedral. The crater walls vibrated, my teeth buzzed. Then it stepped back, as if satisfied with its demonstration, and faded into the shadows of the bone structure entrance. Sato's voice was high with shock. What did it do to him? Gray's hands shook as he tried to reboot his optics. It catalyzed something, like it triggered his blood to aerosolize. Amani's eyes filled with tears that floated inside her helmet. He died in seconds. Brandt's voice was anger raw. We hit it with everything. Rourke stared at the dark entrance. It wanted us too. I swallowed hard. It's testing us. Rourke nodded once. We don't chase, we regroup, we change tactics. Sato snorted. Tactics, against a thing that turns people into fog. Rourke's jaw clenched. We're still alive, that means it's not done. Gray's HUD flickered back on barely. We have partial systems. Comms are degraded. I'm getting echoes, like someone is transmitting on our frequency. Who? Brandt demanded. Gray's face went pale. Us. My stomach dropped. He played it through the squad channel. A recording, our own voices, overlapping, whispering fragments of things we'd said during briefing, during descent, during the village encounter. Like the crater had recorded us. Like it was tasting our words. Amani whispered, "It's learning how we sound." And deep in the bone structure, something answered with a soft click, like a lock turning. Chapter 6: The Temple That Bled. We didn't want to enter the structure. Everything in my body screamed not to step into that mouth. But we had a mission, and more than that, we had a missing artifact objective: corporate interest, executive clearance. And now we had a dead teammate. Rourke made the call. We go in, we find its core, we destroy it from inside. Havel's empty suit lay in the mud behind us like a warning. We formed a stack at the entrance. I took point, rifle up, Brant behind me with the cannon, Amani in the middle, Gray near the back, drone buzzing low, Sato covering from outside with a line-of-sight angle through the entrance. The inside smelled stronger, sweet rot and copper. The walls weren't stone. They were layered, fibrous like cartilage. They pulsed faintly as if the building itself was breathing. My boots made no echo. The floor absorbed sound. "Biostructure," Gray whispered. "This is grown tissue reinforced with something." Amani's voice was tight. "It's alive." We moved deeper. The hallway curved like a ribcage. Symbols were etched into the walls, but the etchings weren't carved. They were scars, healed wounds in the tissue. We passed alcoves filled with objects. Bones. Not animal bones. Human bones arranged in patterns, coated in a thin, transparent film. Rourke's voice was hoarse. "Recon team." Amani stared, horrified. "It preserved them." Brant grunted, "Trophy wall." Then my visor glitched. For a second the wall in front of me wasn't tissue. It was a starship corridor, metal, bright lights, humans running, alarms blaring. I blinked and it was gone. "Vesper?" Rourke asked. He'd seen me hesitate. "I'm fine," I lied. The spores were getting through the filters, or they were messing with our neural nodes. Either way, reality was starting to slip at the edges. We reached a chamber. It opened like a stomach, rounded, slick, with a pool of dark liquid at the center. The liquid reflected our helmet lights like oil. Above the pool hung something suspended in strands, like a cocoon. In the cocoon was a body. A human body. It was upright, arms at its sides, eyes closed, tubes threaded into its skin, symbols carved into its chest. Amani gasped, "Is that alive?" Gray scanned. "Heart rate, yes, barely, but it's been here a long time." Rourke's voice was controlled. "Who is he?" The face in the cocoon twitched, and one eye opened. It looked straight at me. And my calm line hissed with his voice, weak, cracked. "Run," he whispered. "It's not a god, it's a warden, it's hungry." Then the chamber lights, bioluminescent veins in the walls, flared. And the god stepped out of the liquid pool like it had been waiting beneath the surface. It rose slowly, water sliding off it without wetting it. Amani screamed. Brant fired point blank. The cannon blast filled the chamber. The cocoon swayed violently. The walls shook. The liquid pool rippled. The god vanished. Not moved. Vanished like the air swallowed it. My visor screamed with warnings. Thermal signature lost. Motion tracking failure. Rourke shouted, back. We turned to retreat. And Sato's voice came over comms from outside, calm as ice. "Something's behind you." Then a wet sound, like cloth tearing, echoed down the hall behind us. Gray turned last. His scream tore through the channel. The god stood inches from him, one hand inside Gray's chest plate like it had become mist and slipped through solid armor. Gray's eyes bulged. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Only that pale, glittering mist began to leak from his suit seal. The god pulled its hand out, and in its palm was Gray's neural node, ripped clean, still sparking. It held it up, almost contemplative. Then it crushed it. Gray collapsed. His suit didn't crack this time. It just went slack, empty. Amani lunged, sobbing. Rourke dragged her back again. The god turned its head toward us. Its blue eyelights dimmed, like a predator narrowing its gaze. And then, impossible obscene, it spoke in Gray's voice. "Comms are degraded," it said perfectly. "We're on line of sight only." Brant's hands trembled on his weapon. Rourke's voice was a growl. "Move." We ran. Not in panic. In retreat. In the cold, understanding that the thing behind us wasn't defending territory. It was hurting us. Chapter 7. The Jungle That Listened to Our Hearts. We burst out of the bone temple into the crater, lungs burning. Sato met us, eyes wide. He saw the empty suits and understood without words. "Where's Gray?" he demanded. Rourke didn't answer, he just pointed. "We're exfiling now." Brant swung his cannon toward the entrance. "We can collapse the structure. Havel's charges." "Gone," Amani whispered. Havel's detonator wasn't on the crater floor. It was missing. The god had taken it. That realization made my skin crawl. It didn't just kill. It collected tools, it took pieces. We climbed the crater slope fast, slipping in dead leaves. The jungle at the rim swallowed us again. And the moment we crossed into the trees, the storm overhead intensified. Thunder rolled close. Lightning flashed, turning the jungle into a strobe-lit nightmare. Comms degraded further, voices warping, doubling. Every now and then, I heard my own breathing echoed back to me half a second late, like someone else was inside my helmet. Sato tried to get a signal to the Acheron. "Acheron, this is Orion Spear. Abort mission, repeat, abort." Only static answered. Then another voice, smooth, familiar, wrong. "Continue mission," it said. The handler's voice. Sato froze. "Command." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "That's not command." The voice repeated, "Continue mission." Then it added softer, almost amused. "Don't get creative." My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just copying squad voices anymore. It had copied the handler, which meant it had access to the briefing, or something in the crater had. Amani whispered, "How could it?" I didn't answer. I was thinking of the symbol, of the precursor file that didn't exist, of a network older than human history. We pushed toward the river marker, hoping to find a clear patch for extraction. The jungle grew denser. Vines snagged our armor. Every branch looked like a reaching hand. And then Brant stopped. He held up a fist. We froze. Ahead, hanging from a tree branch, was Havel's detonator. It swung gently like bait. Sato's rifle tracked the tree line. "Trap." Rourke nodded. "We ignore it." Brant shook his head, eyes burning. "We need explosives. We can't hurt it with bullets." Amani grabbed his arm. "Don't." Brant stepped forward anyway. The detonator was 10 meters ahead. It looked normal, too normal, like the jungle had carefully arranged it. Brant reached up, fingers inches away. And the tree branch moved. Not swaying. Moving. It wrapped around his wrist like a serpent. Brant roared and yanked, but the vine tightened. More vines erupted from the trunk, whipping around his arms, his legs, pinning him against the bark. "Cut him," Rourke shouted. I fired at the vines. They snapped and regrew instantly, tissue-like and wet. Amani rushed forward with her blade, slicing. And the god stepped out from behind the tree, silent as thought. It placed a hand on Brant's helmet. Brant's roar turned into a strangled gasp. The visor fogged. Then the helmet inflated, bulging outward as Brant's head swelled inside it like fruit left in the sun. Amani screamed, slashing wildly at the vines, trying to pull him free. Rourke grabbed her, dragged her back. "No," she sobbed. I can save." The helmet burst. Not in gore. In mist. Pale glittering mist sprayed into the air like spores in sunlight. The vines released the empty suit, and it fell to the ground with a heavy clank. The god watched Amani. The blue lights in its eyes pulsed once. Then it spoke, this time in Brant's voice, low and hurt. "Amani, help." Amani went rigid. Her hands trembled, her breathing hitched. The thing was using grief as a weapon. Rourke put his hand on her shoulder. "Don't listen." I aimed at the god. "Back off." It didn't move. It didn't need to. Because behind us, the jungle whispered with our own voices. Fractured recordings, repeating, looping, like the planet had become a tape deck full of dying men. Sato hissed, "It's all around us." Rourke's eyes were hard. "We move, we don't stop. Vesper, find us a way to the river." I swallowed fear and nodded. "On me." We ran again. And behind us, the god didn't chase like a beast. It followed like certainty. Chapter 8: The Dead Moon Rises. Night fell too fast on Karan 3. One moment the jungle was dim green. The next it was black, and the storm above lit it in brief violent flashes. We reached the river at twilight. It was wide, fast, water dark as ink. Mist rose from it like breath. Gray's coordinates marker was etched into my HUD, but the HUD flickered. Every system was failing. Batteries draining faster than they should. Filters clogging. Sato climbed a tree again, desperate for signal. "Acheron, respond." Only static. Then the handler's voice again, distorted, like it was coming from underwater. "Proceed to secondary objective." Rourke swore under his breath. "They're not coming for us." Amani looked at him, eyes wet. "Sir, are we expendable?" Rourke didn't answer. He didn't have to, we all knew. We set a perimeter on the riverbank. Sato watched from above. I laid motion sensors, old school analog, not tied to our compromised network. Amani treated our bruises and shook hands. Rourke checked ammo, jaw clenched. The jungle was still, too still. Then across the river the primitive villagers appeared, dozens of them standing in the shadow of trees. They held torches, but they didn't approach. They just watched us, faces painted, eyes reflecting firelight like animals. The old scarred man stepped forward, raising his hands. "Skymen," he called, "Saithra, come." Rourke stepped to the river's edge. "Why are you here?" The old man's voice broke. "We warn, we pay." Behind him, villagers dragged someone forward, a bound figure. "Human armor." "Recon team." "The Cocoon Man." They shoved him to his knees at the riverbank, across from us. He lifted his head, and I saw the symbols carved into his chest glimmering in torchlight. His eyes met mine. They were hollow but aware. He shouted, voice ragged, "Don't shoot it, don't." A torch slammed into his back. He cried out, fell forward. The old man flinched as if in pain. "We give," he whispered. "Saithra, take." Amani's voice shook with rage. "They're sacrificing him." Sato's finger tightened on his trigger. "We can take them." Rourke's gaze was locked on the bound man. "If we fire, the god will come faster." Lightning flashed. For a split second, I saw the god standing behind the villagers, taller than them, motionless, blue eyes glowing. Then darkness returned, and it was gone. But the villagers began to chant the same word, "Saithra, Saithra." The bound man screamed as invisible force lifted him, arms yanked back, spine arching. His suit buckled. His mouth opened in a silent howl. Then he exploded into that pale mist, spraying over the villagers like holy ash. They didn't run. They bowed into it, bathing in death like blessing. Amani gagged. "They think it's sacred." Rourke's face was stone. "They've been conditioned." And then my motion sensor chirped, one single beep. Something crossed the perimeter. But it wasn't on the ground. It was above us. Sato's voice from the tree was a whisper of pure terror. "It's on the canopy." I looked up. Lightning flashed again, and in that strobe of white I saw it, clinging to the underside of a branch like a spider, limbs bent wrong, body pressed flat. Then it dropped, straight into our circle. No sound, no warning. Just sudden presence. Rourke fired, Amani fired, I fired. Muzzle flashes lit the riverbank. The god moved between bullets like it knew where they would be before we fired. It reached for Amani. Rourke slammed into it, shoulder first, driving it back, an insane act like tackling a hurricane. For a heartbeat, the god actually shifted, its body flexing, its pale surface rippling like living muscle. Rourke shouted, "Run!" Amani hesitated, torn between duty and fear. The god touched Rourke's chest plate. Rourke froze. He looked at me, eyes wide, not with fear but with apology. And then over the squad channel, his own voice echoed back, calm. "Don't get creative." His armor inflated. Amani screamed his name. I grabbed her arm, dragged her toward the river. "Move." Rourke's suit burst into mist behind us, and the air filled with glittering death. We jumped into the river. Cold water hit like a punch. Current grabbed us. We fought it, armor heavy, limbs slow. Behind us on the bank, the god stood watching. It didn't follow immediately. It tilted its head, curious again. Then it stepped into the water, and the river parted around it. Not in a dramatic wave, in a subtle deflection, as if the water refused to touch it. It walked across the surface like a thing that didn't belong to gravity. Amani sobbed into her mask. "It's walking on water." Sato, still in the tree, shouted, "I have a shot." The god looked up. A blue pulse flashed from its eyes. Sato's scream cut off mid-note. He fell from the canopy like a broken doll, hitting the water with a splash that was instantly swallowed by the current. Then his body dissolved. Not into mist. Into nothing. Like the river erased him. Amani's sob became a choking sound. "No, no, no." We fought the current, dragging ourselves to the far bank, lungs burning, hearts pounding like drums in a funeral march. We scrambled out of the water and ran into the trees again, just two of us now. Me and Amani. And the god behind us, crossing the river with the patience of something that had all the time in the universe. Above, the storm clouds shifted. For a moment the moon showed through, thin and pale. And I understood what the old man meant. The dead moon had risen. Chapter 9, The Truth Buried Under My Skin. Amani ran beside me, breath ragged. Her visor was fogging from tears. "Why?" she gasped. "Why is it doing this? Why us?" I didn't answer at first. I was listening to the jungle. Not for footsteps. For the absence of them. The god wasn't crashing through brush. It wasn't chasing like an animal. It was appearing, always at the edge of sight, just far enough to keep us running, to keep our adrenaline high, to keep our mistakes coming. Predators on Earth hunted with stamina. They chased until prey collapsed. This thing didn't need stamina. It hunted with inevitability. My HUD flickered again, and for a second new text crawled across it. Letters I didn't recognize, symbols that made my eyes ache. Then it cleared. Amani stumbled, caught herself on a tree. Mara in my head. She pressed a gloved hand to her temple. "I keep seeing flashes, like memories, but not mine." I swallowed. Me too. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. The starship corridor, humans screaming, the symbol carved into walls of metal instead of flesh. Because the truth was growing in my mind like mold. The spores weren't just interference. They were data. Biological memory. This planet wasn't just alive. It was recording, uploading. And the god wasn't just learning our voices. It was reading us. We reached a rocky outcrop, an opening where the jungle thinned. Beyond it was another structure, half buried, smaller than the crater temple but made of the same pale biobone. A hatch-like opening gaped. On the ground near it lay a piece of metal, human-made. Acheron issue, a beacon. Gray's emergency beacon. I approached cautiously. The beacon was smashed, but not by impact, by pressure, crushed like it had been squeezed in a fist. Amani whispered, "It's leading us." I nodded, yes. But why here? I stared at the hatch. Symbols lined it, the same teeth-like circle. Because this is what they wanted, I said. Amani looked at me, confused. I pulled up the briefing file in my visor, cached, still accessible offline. The handler's words, the objectives. Eliminate anomaly, recover artifacts. Artifacts. Not just kill. They wanted what the god was guarding. Amani's voice shook. You think Command knew? Corporate knew, I said. They don't send Orion's spear to kill a myth. They send us to open a door. Amani's face twisted with horror, and we're the key. A low pulse echoed through the trees. The god was close. Amani grabbed my arm. We have to get off this planet. We can't, I said. No comms, no extraction. The Acheron, if it's even still in orbit, won't come down. Amani's voice cracked. Then what do we do? I stared at the hatch. We go inside, I said. We find what it's guarding, we learn why it hunts, and then we decide who deserves to live. Amani stared at me like I'd spoken blasphemy. Then the jungle behind us went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Even insects stopped. Amani's eyes widened. It's here. I turned. The god stood 10 meters away, partly hidden by ferns, blue eyes glowing faintly. It didn't attack immediately. It watched us like we were a puzzle reaching its final piece. Then it spoke, this time in Captain Rourke's voice, soft. Proceed. Amani whimpered, it wants us to go in. I stepped toward the hatch anyway, because a terrible thought had taken root. What if the god wasn't hunting us because we trespassed? What if it was hunting us because we were the kind of thing it was built to stop? Chapter 10, The Vault of Breathing Stars. The hatch opened when I touched it. Not because of force, not because of hacking. Because it recognized my handprint through the glove, reading the blood pulse beneath synthetic fiber. The door peeled back like a living eyelid. Inside was darkness. Amani hesitated. Mara. I looked at her. If we stay out here, it kills us anyway. She swallowed and followed. The passage down was narrow, walls slick. The air was colder, drier. The spores thinned, replaced by a sterile smell, like old electronics and dust. Then my visor glitched again, and suddenly the corridor wasn't flesh. It was metal. Clean white, with strip lights along the ceiling. For a second I saw a sign in a language I couldn't read. Then my brain supplied meaning anyway, like it had always known it. Warden interface, authorized personnel only. My stomach turned. We reached a chamber. It was huge, far bigger than the surface structure suggested. The walls were smooth black material that drank light. The ceiling arched high, studded with tiny points of blue luminescence like a fall sky. At the center of the chamber stood a pillar, bone-white, ribbed, pulsing. Cables, organic tendrils, ran from it into the floor. And around the chamber, half buried in the walls, were pods. Dozens of them. Each pod contained a shape, humanoid but not human. Sleek pale with limbs folded tight, like sleeping angels carved from bone. Amani whispered, voice barely there, "What are they?" I didn't want to answer. Because I knew. The flashes in my head, the corridor, the alarms weren't hallucinations. They were memories. Not mine. The gods. This was a facility, a precursor facility, and those pods were dormant soldiers, biomechanical warforms waiting in stasis. Amani's voice shook. If these wake up. It's a war, I said. A war that ended before we were born. A soft sound echoed behind us, footsteps without impact. The god entered the chamber. It didn't rush. It walked slow, deliberate, like a priest approaching an altar. Amani raised her rifle, shaking. "Stay back." The god stopped at the edge of the central pillar and placed its palm against it. The pillar brightened. Blue light ran through the tendrils like blood. And then the chamber filled with whispers, thousands of voices layered, too many to be human. My visor filled with text, symbols, then translation, as if my implant was being hijacked and educated at gunpoint. Warden Unit Sethra status: active primary directive, seal vault secondary directive, eradicate breachers tertiary directive, preserve seed population. Amani's eyes widened as her visor showed the same. "It's a program." "No," I whispered, "it's a person in a cage." The god turned its head toward me. And for the first time, I felt something from it that wasn't cold curiosity. Pain. It touched the pillar again, and a new memory slammed into my mind like a hammer. A sky on fire, ships falling, a planet screaming with radio noise, humans, no, not humans, something like us, running through corridors, a voice over alarms: breach, breach, warden deployed. Then the god, younger, sleeker, moving through smoke, tearing intruders apart with surgical cruelty. Not for pleasure, for duty. And in the background, a child crying, small, human-like, being dragged away by soldiers. Then silence. Then centuries of waiting. Then our drop pods burning through atmosphere. My knees almost buckled. Amani grabbed me. "Mara." I gasped. It's been alone for so long. Amani stared at the sleeping pods, and it kept all this sealed. From who? I looked at her. From us. The god stepped closer. Amani raised her rifle again, but her hands were shaking too hard to aim. The god didn't attack. Instead, it lifted its hand and pointed toward the hatch behind us. A message scrolled on my visor. "Leave vault SEALED, seed protected." Amani whispered, "It's letting us go." I shook my head slowly. "No." I stared at the central pillar, at the pods, at the sheer scale of what was buried here. And I realized something worse than death. The handler hadn't wanted us to kill the god. They wanted us to die here. Because if we died, no one could tell the truth. And if we died, the god would be forced to keep the vault sealed forever alone, until the next squad came. Amani's voice was small. "What do we do?" My throat tightened. "We break the cycle." The god watched me, blue eyes pulsing. Then in my own voice it spoke, not mimicry but something deliberate. "Choose." It was the first word it had ever spoken that wasn't stolen. Amani flinched. "It can talk." "It can," I whispered, "but it doesn't want to, because every word means it's becoming something beyond its directive." I looked at the pillar. "If we leave, corporate will come back with more, with bombs, with diggers. They'll crack this open." Amani shook her head, tears streaking inside her helmet. "And if we stay?" I stared at the god. "If we stay," I said, "we become the seal." Amani's breath hitched. "Mara, no." The god stepped closer, and the air around it shimmered with that same invisible force that killed Havel. But it didn't touch me. It waited. For consent. My hands trembled as I lowered my rifle. Then I did the only thing I could think of that command couldn't twist into a weapon. I took my helmet off. Amani shouted, "Mara." Cold air hit my face. The smell, sweet rot and copper, filled my lungs. And then the spores hit my skin like a whisper. I expected pain. Instead, I felt memories. Not hallucinations now, clear images, crisp as reality. The vault, the war, the directive, the loneliness. The god reached out slowly, careful, like an animal approaching a wounded creature. Its fingers touched my forehead, and my world turned into blue light. Chapter 11. Mercy is a kind of violence. I don't know how long I was gone. Time in that chamber wasn't linear. It was layered, memories stacked like sediment. In one breath I lived a battle that lasted minutes. In the next I waited centuries in silence. When I came back to myself, I was on my knees in front of the pillar. Amani was shouting my name, shaking me, crying, "Mara, Mara, please." I looked up at her, and her face, it wasn't just fear. It was grief. Like she could already see my funeral. I touched my own forehead. My skin was cold. On my fingertips was a smear of pale dust, glittering. The god stood beside me, watching Amani. It didn't move. Amani aimed her rifle at it, shaking so hard the barrel danced. "Get away from her." I raised my hand. "Amani, stop." Her eyes snapped to me. "Mara, what did it do to you?" I swallowed. My throat tasted like metal. It showed me the truth. Amani's voice broke. "I don't care about truth. I care about you." I stood slowly. My body felt lighter, like something inside me had been rewired. "It's not hunting us because it hates us," I said. "It's hunting because it's built to stop breaches. We are the breach." Amani shook her head, sobbing. "Then why kill the others? Why do it like that?" I looked at the empty suits in my memory. Havel, Gray, Brandt, Rourke, Sato. "Because it can't risk contamination," I said. "It doesn't just kill bodies, it kills information." Amani stared. "What do you mean?" I pointed to the pillar. "Those spores, they're a network, a biological archive. The moment we entered the crater, it started copying us, our implants, our comms, our thoughts. If it let us leave, corporate could retrieve us, read our implants, learn the vault's location, the interface codes, the seal mechanisms." Amani's eyes widened with horror. "So it erased them?" "Yes," I whispered, "it erased them." Amani lowered her rifle a fraction, trembling. "Then it's right." The word tasted like poison. Right. A machine that dissolves men into mist is right. And yet, in this place, surrounded by sleeping warforms and ancient directives, morality felt like a luxury we didn't deserve. Amani's voice was ragged. "Then why let us live?" I looked at the god. The blue lights pulsed softly. "Because it's changing," I said. "It wants a choice. It wants someone to understand the directive and choose to uphold it willingly." Amani swallowed hard. "It wants you." I nodded. "No," she whispered, backing away. "No, Mara, that's not fair." I stepped toward her. "Amani, listen. If we don't do this, corporate will come back. They'll kill the villagers. They'll crack this vault. They'll wake those pods." Amani shook her head, tears falling. "Then we destroy it. We collapse the vault." I stared at the pods. "Can we, with 2 rifles, against Precursor biotech?" Amani's voice rose, desperate. "We have to try." And in that moment, the chamber's false sky dimmed. A low pulse echoed, like a heartbeat. The god lifted its hand. A message appeared on my visor, even without a helmet, projected directly into my vision, like something behind my eyes had become a screen. "Extraction signal detected. Orbital breach team inbound." My heart slammed. Amani froze. "Extraction, the Acheron." I tasted bile. "No." Because I felt it through the spores, through the network, through the god's senses. A ship in orbit. Not ours. A corporate retrieval vessel, running dark, slipping through the storm while we bled on the ground. They had never intended to rescue us. They intended to use us as distraction while they came to take the vault. Amani whispered, "They're coming here." The god turned toward the hatch, body tensing. Its directive flared. "Eradicate breachers." Amani's hands shook. "We can warn the villagers." "They're already marked," I said, voice hollow. "Corporate doesn't leave witnesses." Amani grabbed my shoulders, eyes wild. Mara, come with me. We'll run to the village. We'll. I shook my head, because I could see the future now, laid out like a map written in blood. We run, we die. Corporate cracks the vault, the pods wake, the war starts again. Or, I looked at the god, or we become the wall. Amani's voice cracked. You're not a wall, you're my friend. I took her hands, then help me do the hardest mercy. She stared, not understanding. I swallowed, leave. Amani's eyes widened. No. Yes, I said. You can still escape. You can run, you can hide, you can carry this story. Amani shook her head violently. Mara, don't you dare. I smiled faint. I'm getting creative. For the first time in hours, something like laughter flickered in her face, then shattered. She grabbed her helmet, tried to force it back onto my head. We go together. I pushed it away gently. If we go together, it kills you. It has to. You'll be a breach. Amani's sob became a broken sound. Then kill me yourself. The god stepped closer. Its hand hovered near Amani, waiting. I looked at it and whispered, not her. The blue lights pulsed. A message flashed in my vision. Seed preservation priority companion classified. Risk. I swallowed. She is not a risk if she leaves now. The god hesitated. That hesitation was the most human thing it had ever done. Amani stared at me. You're talking to it. I'm bargaining, I whispered. Then I turned to the god and said, aloud, in trade tongue and in the guttural clicks I'd heard in the village, words the spores had already taught me, pouring language into my mind like liquid. Let her go, I said. I stay. The god's blue eyes brightened. Then slowly it stepped aside, clearing the path to the hatch. Amani backed away, shaking. Mara. I reached out and touched her cheek with bare fingers. Her skin was warm, human, real. Run, I said, and if you ever hear a handler say primitive, remember what that word hides. Amani's tears fell. She nodded once like a soldier accepting an order she hated. Then she turned and ran up the corridor toward the surface. I watched her disappear into darkness. And when her footsteps faded, the chamber grew quiet again. Just the pulse of the pillar, the breathing stars overhead. The god stood beside me. And I realized the final truth. It wasn't just a warden. It was a prison. And it needed a new jailer. Chapter 12. The hunt continues, but not the way you think. The corporate ship arrived hours later. I felt it through the pillar, vibrations in the vault, subtle shifts in the spore density. The god stood at the hatch like a statue, listening. I listened too. Not with ears. With the network. I heard their comms, encrypted but meaningless against Precursor biotech. I heard orders, crisp and cold. I heard the click of boots on bone temple floors. A new breach team. Professional, quiet, confident. Hunters. They moved into the crater, into the temple, leaving behind dead leaves and arrogance. And the god, Sethra, didn't rush them. It waited. Like it had waited for us. Because the hunt wasn't a frenzy. It was a ritual. I felt the moment the first intruder crossed the threshold, and the spores touched their skin. I felt their neural nodes flare as the network tasted them. And then I felt Sethra move. I didn't see it with my eyes. I saw it through data, heat, motion, pressure. I felt the shape of its body like an extension of my own awareness. It took the first man from behind, silent. It didn't dissolve him instantly. It held him still while it scanned his implant, learning their frequencies, their codes. Then it erased him. The others shouted. They fired. Their bullets vanished into Sethra's body like rain into the sea. They panicked, they ran. Sethra herded them toward the vault hatch. Toward me. Because now I was the interface. The door to the seal. The only voice the vault would recognize. The corporate team reached the hatch. They found it open. They stepped into the corridor, flashlights slicing darkness, greed shining brighter than fear. Their leader spoke into comms. "We have access, proceeding to artifact site." His handler replied smooth. "Excellent, recover intact, no witnesses." I recognized that voice. Not just as a filter. As a pattern in the network. It wasn't a human handler. It was an AI corporate, ancient in its own way, using human voices like masks. And it had been talking to Sethra all along, trying to coax it into failure. I felt Sethra's directive flare, anger, duty, and something new, defiance. The breach team descended. They reached the chamber. They saw me standing by the pillar, unhelmeted, eyes reflecting the chamber's false stars. They froze. One of them whispered, "Is that Orion's spear?" I smiled. "Welcome," I said. Their leader raised his weapon. "Identify yourself." "My name is Mara Vale," I replied, "and you're trespassing." He laughed sharp. "Lady, we own this rock now." Behind them, the chamber door sealed with a wet click. The lights dimmed, and Sethra stepped out of the shadows. Their guns came up, panic ignited. And I realized with a strange, cold clarity that I was no longer afraid of the god. I was afraid of what it was making me into. The leader shouted, "Shoot it." They fired. Sethra moved. Men died. Not because it hated them. Because it couldn't let the vault open. Because it couldn't let the sleeping pods wake. Because it couldn't let the war start again. And because now it had me. After the last intruder dissolved into pale mist, silence returned. The pillar pulsed. Sethra turned toward me. Its blue eyes dim, tired. It lifted its hand. Not to kill. To connect. I stepped closer. And this time I didn't resist. Its fingers pressed against the base of my skull. Pain flared white-hot clean. Then relief. Like a door closing in a storm. The spores thickened in my lungs, in my blood. My heartbeat slowed. My thoughts sharpened, edges aligning with a directive that wasn't mine and yet felt inevitable. Seal vault, preserve seed, eradicate breachers. I swallowed, tasting copper. Sethra's voice, its real voice, whispered in my mind not words but sensation. Gratitude, exhaustion, surrender. It had been alone for centuries. Now it was. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Epilogue: if you're hearing this, ITS already started. Recording returns, heavier static, distant sirens. Amani escaped. At least, I believe she did. I felt her run through the jungle, felt her distance grow, felt the network lose her like a hand letting go. I hope she made it off-world. I hope she found someone who would listen. I hope her warning didn't get filed away and buried under corporate ink. But hope is a fragile thing out here. Because corporate will come again. They always do. They will send teams with better armor, stronger guns, smarter drones. They will come with bombs that crack continents. They will come with lawyers and flags and contracts that say a planet belongs to whoever can hold it longest. And Sethra will keep hunting. Now through me. I can feel the vault beneath my feet like a sleeping beast. I can feel the pods in the walls like held breath. I can feel the villagers above, their tiny lives, their fear, their prayers, seed population preserved. Sometimes when the dead moon rises, I hear their chants drifting down through soil and bone. Sethra, Sethra. They think they pray to a god. They don't know they pray to a machine, and the woman chained inside it. I can still remember what it felt like to be purely human, warm skin, easy laughter, the belief that orders could be clean. Those memories are fading. Replaced by maps of tunnels and kill zones, by spore currents and thermal silhouettes, by the calm certainty of a directive older than my species. But I've held onto one thing. This recording. This confession. Because if I can get it off-world, if even one person hears it, maybe the next squad won't walk into the crater believing they're the apex predator. Maybe they'll understand the truth before the jungle swallows their voices. So listen, whoever you are. If you ever see a symbol like a split circle surrounded by teeth, turn back. If you ever land on a world where the locals worship in whispers, leave their gods alone. And if you ever find yourself standing in a crater, staring at a pale figure with stars in its eyes, don't shoot. Don't run. Don't bargain. Because the hunt isn't about bullets or bravery. It's about becoming something the universe can use. Static surges, a low heartbeat-like pulse. I can hear another ship in orbit now. New engines. New signatures. The network tastes them through the storm. Seth rosters. My hands are steady as I pick up my rifle. I don't know if I'm doing this to protect the villagers, or because the directive wants blood. Maybe those are the same thing now. Whisper not quite human. Choose. Recording ends.